continuing along on the topic of masculinity and really stepping into that and what it means to do so, right? I've come to this point of understanding that there is a key factor, or like a pillar, that is essentially non-negotiable, and it goes hand in hand with this. You can't have masculine, stepping into your masculine without this. And that would be emotional regulation. It would be your emotions and understanding how to navigate that correctly, right? Now, I want to be clear that, in no way am I trying to say that I have this fully figured out, because I don't. However, I do have, well over a decade of putting conscious focus and attention on just trying to understand the topic itself. I say a decade, and I say that intentionally because after my stabbing, I gained a really interesting understanding and a shift in perspective when that happened. I mean, obviously, it's not the easiest way to get to these points of understanding, but it's what I was asking for, right, to really understand. And so before my big incident, I was the absolute biggest ambassador for the positive vibes only, all the time movement. Remember that? Everything is awesome. Even if the buildings are burning behind you, everything's fine. Just look away, right? And that's the way I understood emotions at the time, right? Where it's I created a scale for myself, and the better that I felt, the love and the joy and excitement, that's what I was striving for. And those lower emotions were kind of down the scale, the anxiety and depression and fear, whatever. I essentially tried to just not feel those, right? So on this scale, my objective was to be 50% or better, because if I was less than content, then that would be seen as bad. And as long as I was content or better, that would be, good. And I learned that this was just not the best way to manage my emotions, mainly because we're human beings. And it's really important that we feel the full emotional spectrum, because that's a part of our human experience, right? So after my stabbing, I was forced to confront so much. And I'll tell you what, avoidance was my absolute go-to. It was my specialty. I just, if it felt uncomfortable, I would deny or suppress or just distract myself from anything that felt uncomfortable, right? That was just how I coped. And 6 months after my incident, it's the physical stuff, the physical healing was so much better, but I was not okay mentally. I was not in a good place. And over time, I just watched the dwindling of my self-confidence and trust in myself and my ability to stay connected with people, because it's this overtook my whole body, and I couldn't keep up with coping that way. And I was faced with having to really feel a bunch of bottled up emotions, and I was pretty scared. It was pretty scary, having to feel desperate just to feel better, and in time I eventually realized that the only way that I could really deal with these emotions is that I had to feel them, and I had to feel them fully, all the way through. And that made all the difference, because the moment that I stopped running from my emotions, I regained something different for myself. I was able to pause and choose how I was going to respond, rather than being reactive from the same unconscious narcissistic places, right? And this is a skill, and I want to be really clear that even to this day, it's not I've mastered it. However, it's something that I've really showed up for, and I'm committed to. So what does it look like? For me, when I notice that I'm triggered, it's really important for me to acknowledge it. I take a pause from once everything's just spinning, I take a moment to pause and acknowledge and try to pinpoint what I'm feeling specifically, try to zoom in on and I'm feeling this, right? And then listening to it and then sitting with it. When I sit long enough with it, the feeling, and I move past that that zing, that charge, what I found is that on the other side of the discomfort, there is some serious wisdom that really lasts and becomes a part of you. Sometimes it doesn't really have words either. It's it's felt. And without the capacity to really feel and understand and stay present internally and within my own experience, it takes away a certain solidness that I know that I can provide for others. And when I do cultivate it, it creates this really deep internal grounding, I would say, that like makes me feel safe within myself and safe for my loved ones and for the people around me. And I think that's really important because it's the masculine containment that you essentially need to make sure you have for yourself so that you can have it for other people. So, and how do you do that? Through understanding our emotions. All right, we'll see ya.